All right, so we got some good news from Nintendo. One of these pieces, I'm going to kind of combine two of them together. One of which is not surprising. The other, well, really, neither one of them are surprising, but they're still good to have them confirmed. So the first piece I'm just going to mention here, and like I said, I'm combining these two together. That Nintendo did confirm that we're still going to see the Switch 2 before the end of the fiscal year, which ends on March 31st of 2025. So what that means in terms of timing, we have no idea because that's still, 5 months that we have. Any time in that time period, we will see the Switch 2. Obviously, it didn't happen on October like I thought it might. So we don't know at this point when it's going to happen. But we did get confirmation along with that, as part of their investor meeting and everything that they recently had, that the Switch 2 is confirmed to be fully backwards compatible with physical and digital games, which is the first time they've done it for this big of a thing. Because, in the past, yes, they've had backwards compatibility with, from the Wii, the GameCube to the N6, or I'm sorry, GameCube to the Wii, where you could play GameCube discs on the Wii, at least on the first model of the Wii. They've done it with all their handhelds, having backwards compatibility with the previous handheld. They did it with the Wii U to the Wii, but then the Switch, because of the fact that they, for lack of a better word, switched the format of the games and everything, there was no backwards compatibility with the Wii U, and including with the digital games, which really sucked. Plus, they just completely changed the system for the digital titles outside of the actual Wii U games. But this will be the first time it's done on this scale, because of the fact that the Switch was so successful, and instead of Nintendo blocking people from being able to have access to all the games that they purchased on the Switch, physical and digital, they will be able to carry their entire library over, which I think also will probably encourage people to buy a Switch 2 right away, because they don't have to lose any of their games in the process. But enough about that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's definitely good to have that confirmation there about the fact that it's going to be backwards compatible. Definitely, confirms a lot of what we've been saying. It's a bit disappointing to know, that they still don't have a sort of concrete date as far as like when they're going to announce it, because sure, we've got 4 or 5 months still left in the fiscal year, but I'm just like, come on guys, you're really pushing it, aren't you? You're really trying to make people wait out. And I don't think that there's a reason, as far as like, we talked about this before, maybe it's the reason for like waiting to make sure there's enough supply. But sure, you could at least show us what it looks like and show us the features before saying, before actually having out for pre-order or something like that. Just give us something to know, to see what it looks like. So I'm not sure why they're delaying that, why they're just stringing it along. I just wish that they would just put it out there, be done with it. Part of me actually wants to say that we could get something by the end of this month, getting some sort of teaser, even if it's not a full trailer video. If it's just something like, hey, here's the Switch 2, here's what it looks like, here's the name, black screen. And then, that would get people hyped up a whole lot, just by doing that. But we'll definitely see about that. But yeah, it's definitely great that there's backwards compatibility. People won't have to lose access to their library. And, I think if it wasn't for the fact that, I mean, I mean, I was gonna say, maybe it's not such a bad thing that the Wii U wasn't, or the Switch wasn't backwards compatible with the Wii U, because I mean, we're already technically most of the games are already on there at this point, anyway, so that's not too bad. Um, Now, one thing that I thought about more, especially with the fact that this was confirmed now, is is that this definitely gives credence to the idea that the reason why Nintendo shut down a whole lot or tried to get more of these Switch emulators shut down is because of the fact that they're like, yeah, the Switch 2 is at least made with like the architecture is really close to the original Switch. So like if you modify it enough, you could technically get close enough to figuring out the Switch 2, and so that could be a reason as to why they're like, yeah, let's try to get everything out off the streets.
Yeah, and, in terms of not giving us a release date or anything like that, not revealing it yet, I'd say the only reason that they're doing that is because they want to maximize sales as much as possible during the holiday. That's really all it comes down to. In the case of the Wii U, they knew that they weren't going to sell any more consoles over the holiday, or at least that it wasn't going to make a dramatic difference. And they wanted to get people excited, which obviously they very much succeeded. I think that that's the only reason they haven't revealed it. Now, from what they're saying, it sounds like they haven't changed their plans of when they were going to reveal it. It's not like they've kept pushing it back. It's more like they have a specific time frame planned. They're just keeping it vague as to when that is because, I guess probably at least in part because they want to hopefully sell as many of the Switch as they can before they reveal the new console. And some people, once they see the new console, it will give them the motivation to wait. Whereas other people are going to be like, it could be another year before this comes out. I want to get a Switch now so that I can play until the Switch 2 comes out, and then I'll just swap over to the new system. So we'll see what happens with that. I don't think that I would be surprised if it gets revealed before the end of the year. I mean, I hope I'm wrong, because I would very much like to see what it's going to look like, how it's going to do, or, what it's going to do differently, how much of the rumors were true and all of that, even though it does appear that many of them were, in fact, true. Now, in terms of the backwards compatibility, I'm very glad that they're doing this. Obviously, the only thing that could convince me for sure to get one on day one would be if it had an OLED model at launch. Otherwise, I'm waiting, as tempting as it is to do otherwise. But, really the only way that I could see myself getting one at launch was either if A, Nintendo gave me one, which, unless my channel blows up in the next however many months, that's not happening. Or number two, my channel actually got monetized and I was making enough money to where I could justify making the purchase because I would know that it would enable me to create more content that would also help to get more money. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, I know that if I were to get a Switch 2 and were to start doing comparisons between that and the Steam Deck, it would definitely be something that could draw more people to the channel. But it's so hard for me to justify spending that kind of money, especially if it doesn't have the OLED screen, because I know that I'm just going to be like, I want my OLED screen. And I mean, there would have to be something dramatic to make it worthwhile for me. And right now, I'm not there yet. But I don't know, maybe Nintendo will change my mind on it. I'm not there yet. But either way, backwards compatibility is great. I'm super glad about that because that also tells me that when I'm ready to make the change, I don't have to leave behind my library. I can just take everything with me over to the new device, and then I can pass on the OLED Switch to my wife, who probably won't use it a ton, but I'll still pass it on to her. And then I will pass on the original Switch to my oldest son, who, by the way, just turned 9 over this weekend. This past Sunday. He turned 9, and there was good stuff with that. But anyway.
Quick question. What if there was another option? What if Nintendo guaranteed performance upgrades for all the original Switch games? Would that incentivize you enough to get a Switch too, even if it didn't have OLED?
See, the thing is that I expect that there's probably going to be performance upgrades on a number of games, which would certainly be a motivator. But the problem remains that I have a hard time with buying one of those when I know that there's going to be an OLED model down the line that I'm going to want. Because I already bought 3 Switches this last generation. I bought one at launch, which I still have. Then I bought a V2 when around the time that Animal Crossing came out, because I knew that if I didn't, that my wife was going to be using my Switch all the time and I was never going to get to use it again. At least while she was playing Animal Crossing, which she did easily have like 200 plus hours in that game. And so I went ahead and bought a V2. I used that for myself because I knew I would be using it more than she would. And so she got the original model, I got the V2. And then about a year after the OLED came out, after I had some hands-on time with an OLED at a Best Buy, I was like, I want to get that OLED, but I need to sell the V2 in order to justify it. And, then I checked with my brother-in-law because I know his kids had wanted a Switch and they'd been kind of holding off. And so I gave him a good deal that let them have access to my digital library, albeit pared down to only the games that are kid-friendly, which saved them a lot of money, and then I also sold it to them for cheaper as well. So it's like, then I had a big chunk of money to go towards the purchase of a new Switch and got the OLED. So I just don't want to do that again. Because as it stands, like, I think it's even more so because of the fact that I have so many games to play. And although the Switch performance is almost never what I want it to be, I can live with the poor performance, or at least, less than the ideal performance, if it means that I don't have to spend a bunch of money on another device and end up with something collecting dust. Because I have too many things like that, and I don't like doing that. And I don't know. We'll see what Nintendo says when they reveal it. See what kind of information comes out. See if there's anything that makes it worthwhile for me. As of right now, I'm just not sure. Because as much as I would love to play something like Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom at 60 frames per second, I also don't think that I want to spend $400 just to do that. Especially because, first of all, I don't have any intention of ever playing Breath of the Wild again. I loved it. I've tried going back to it a few times and playing for a bit, but I just kind of lost interest after a while. If anything, I would go back to Tears of the Kingdom, because there's still a lot of stuff I haven't done in that. But as much as I would love to have the increased performance, I would also be missing that OLED screen. And that's one of my biggest issues with it. So it is what it is. All right. Any more thoughts on those topics?
No, sir.